This is Straight Talk with Atlanta native Greg Fann.
Well, welcome tonight to Straight Talk with yours truly, Greg Fann, the preacher man, and Shanan E. Jones. Listen, tonight is going to have a great program. We talk about Project 2025. We discussed it before. We're going to have Brother Greg Hamilton, who's going to be talking more about it and what's really going on with Project 2025, how they try to take us back. But listen, like us, subscribe to our channel, make comments, and share. And listen to us each week at 7 p.m. on WIGO, 1570 on your AM dial. And if you have church news or news and information, just send it to Straight Talk News 1362 at gmail.com. We'll be on the other side after Miss C. We'll see you.
Hi, Miss C here with your 3-minute news blast. Hope you're doing well out there. I'm so glad that you're with me today. The city of East Point presents Wednesday Wind Down in the Point. That's Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024, from 5 to 9 p.m., hosted by saxophone player Isaiah Tatum and comedian Marvin Dixon. Among the guests will be Eddie Levert. You remember Eddie Levert with the OJs? He's going to be there. John B., Algebra, and the Soul Cartel. There will be food and beverage vendors on site. Wednesday Wind Down in the Point will be held at the Downtown Commons, 2714 East Point Street in East Point. Get more information by visiting the website at www.eastpointcity.org. Bottled water and lawn chairs are permitted, but you're not permitted to bring your dog, your tents, coolers, outside food, and drinks. Okay, now last time I told you that they needed more poll workers and I was going to give you that information. Well, they don't need any more poll workers, and I'm sorry if I got your hopes up. Okay? Flipper Temple AME Church at 580 Atlanta Student Movement Boulevard in Atlanta invites you to worship with them each Sunday at 10:45 a.m. You can worship in the sanctuary, or you can go online to YouTube, Facebook, or the church's website. And we also have a dynamic Bible study on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. You can call the church office to get all those details at 404-522-5020. And listen, I have 4 things I'd like for you to do for me. I'd like for you to like us, subscribe to us, leave comments. Please let us know how we're doing. And also, we'd like for you to share us. Don't keep Straight Talk News to yourself. Let everybody know about Straight Talk News, okay? And listen, we'd be glad to announce your event. Email it to me at straighttalknews1362@gmail.com. And we're going to see you next time. Have a wonderful week.
So very much. We have a gentleman. His name is Gregory Hamilton. And Dr. Hamilton is a former pastor. He is a student of religious theology and talking about 2025 project and talking about the Constitution and what's happening and a little history about how we got here to where we are and where they're trying to take us back to where we used to be with Project 2025. So Shannon and I'll be back after this, and on the other side, Shannon got a lot to say. Don't you go nowhere. Right, Big Papa?
Okay. Well, I was reading a New York Times Magazine interview by Lulu Garcia Navarro with the president of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts. And he makes it very clear that his goal is to, that Project 2025 is to destroy the administrative state And what they mean by that is what they call the deep state. And if you really examine it closely, the Heritage Foundation, first of all, is a public policy organization, and Project 2025 is a 920-page document. But it specifically really harkens back to the original history of the first compromise of the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, when William Howard Taft was running for re-election for president in 1912, and his opponent was the Democrat Woodrow Wilson, and the Bull Moose Party or Progressive Party was headed up by Teddy Roosevelt, who was the president before William Howard Taft and who had served 2 terms before that with William Howard Taft as his vice president. And then Eugene Debs, the socialist, was running. So it was a 4-man race. And it was very interesting because William Howard Taft, in his stump speech at the Republican Convention in 1912, came up with this slogan that's been with the Republican Party for a number of years now. And it was the slogan of less government, more responsible government. And that line has gotten more and more radical over the years. And the reason why William Howard Taft said that statement was to basically try to win over Southern white former slave owners and those who didn't like the Reconstruction in the past, and basically say, hey, we're for states' rights and we want to reduce the federal government. It was a massive turn, a massive pivot for the Republican Party away from Lincoln's ideal of a strong central government, which Lincoln really loved Alexander Hamilton's ideas on that point, and believed that states, if left to themselves, would basically be the worst entity to uphold basic civil rights, human rights, women's rights, religious freedom, separation of church and state, you name it. And so he was right in that configuration and said that we needed a strong central government. That's why he called for a constitutional convention, along with James Madison. But Jefferson and Madison, they came up with what's called the Virginia-Kentucky resolutions, which became the actual wording of the Confederacy during the time of the Civil War. And basically, they put forward the doctrine of nullification. The Kentucky resolutions was a little bit more watered down, not as strong as Jefferson's, saying that states ought to be ultimately sovereign over the federal government. And so what you have here is you have this Heritage Foundation, their whole basis, their whole foundation is the foundation of the lost cause. The lost cause being this idea, well, okay, so the South lost the Civil War, but it was all over states' rights, not slavery. And in fact, it was over slavery and state rights together. You cannot separate the two issues over that time. And you still can't separate them today. You see, the more you allow states to be ultimately sovereign over the federal government, okay, instead of semi-autonomous, they're semi-autonomous right now under the concept of federalism, okay, their goal, the Heritage Foundation's real goal, ultimate goal, is to do away with the Civil War amendments, the 13th Amendment, which is the Emancipation Proclamation Act, the 14th Amendment, which gives us our basic rights, okay, due process, et cetera, privileges and immunities, equal protection, et cetera. And then the Voting Rights Act, which is essentially giving blacks the right of citizenship and the right to vote. And so that was key. But you see, they don't like, and what that did during that time is it gave the federal government what's known as the Incorporation Clause, the right to regulate the states, which they hadn't had before, especially when it came to the first 8 Bill of Rights, which included our basic rights, religious freedom, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, et cetera. And so all of those things now became a regulatory force, which then grew the federal government and its agencies to basically regulate the states. And so the Heritage Foundation, their whole plan is basically to do away with the federal administrative state, not completely, like Dr. Miller said, but it also includes, it basically is a plan to allow the president, whoever they hope it's Donald Trump, to become an authoritarian dictator, basically to go after his enemies, use the Justice Department, not allowing the Justice Department to be independent, but turning it to be political, and then doing away, basically firing like something like, 100,000, 200,000 federal workers. There's like I think there's like 2,200,000 federal workers in these agencies, and the Heritage Foundation calls them unelected officials. And so therefore, they have no right, to tell us what to do and hinder a Republican presidency that wants to go rogue and, and allow the states to do whatever they want. One final thing. What Hamilton proved back in 1787 at the Constitutional Convention is if you allow states to go on their own and be autonomous, like it was during the Confederate period, and I don't mean the Civil War, but prior to the Constitutional Convention of 1787, you had trade wars, you had fisticuffs, even militias fighting each other from state to state, states fighting each other. It was state warfare and not the same currency, and so they needed a strong central government to regulate all that. Well, the southern states didn't like that because they knew they had strong plantations and slaves and so on. And so what's been proven is if you allow states to basically go on their own, they will not uphold rights like the federal government. So that was proven prior to the Civil War is there was no rights for slaves. There was no citizenship. There was no rights for women, essentially. And those were big things that needed to be corrected. And so we had what's called a second founding. There's a book here I have by Eric Foner, winner of a Pulitzer Prize for his book, The Second Founding, How the Civil War and Reconstruction Remade the Constitution. And it's fascinating because that's what they want to deny. They want to basically strip these rights, and they don't like same-sex marriage, which, hey, listen, that's a problem for us morally, obviously. But constitutionally, under the Equal Protection Clause, as Dwight Nelson has preached at Andrews University, at the Pioneer Memorial Church, we need to uphold our own standards as a church in terms of hiring practices in our institutions and hold to our moral standard. But when it comes to the state, you've got the 14th Amendment, you've got the Equal Protection Clause. So you've got same-sex marriage, you've got abortion rights, which has now been done away with. And what did the Supreme Court do in the Dobbs decision that outlawed abortion? They basically threw it to the states. You states, you duke it out. All right. So what does that do? That leaves everything into confusion. And as confusion and chaos reigns and gets more and more out of hand in this country by such thinking, what it does is it allows the states to kind of look up to, we need a savior. We need a president, with a unitary executive theory to basically do whatever he wants to get everybody under control. So they start to look for a savior. It's kind of like Satan, who gives people diseases and then pretends to be the healer. And that's really what's going on. It's a setup. This whole Project 2025 is a setup for an authoritarian dictatorship. And in the interview, Kevin Roberts with Lulu Garcia Navarro specifically says, this is on January 21, just this last Sunday, he says, yes, not only do we want the destruction of the federal administrative state, but we definitely want to prepare for a strong authoritarian dictator-like president, which they claim is what the founders wanted originally, which is nonsense.
Wow.
Well, much to say about where we were and what Lincoln did, what Taft did and how we got to this point under Lincoln, changing things and bringing things under federal control versus state control and states' rights. But we see what's happening with states' rights now. You know, the Republican Party is a party that said they want to give states rights. They want less government, but then they create more government. They say they want less government, but they create more government. And we know, Shannon, from our discussion with the 2025 project, that this whole thing is to have a plan by the Harris and these conservatives, and they'll call themselves conservatives, but they want to create a dictatorship. They want to give a playbook as to how the person that goes in is going to be a dictator and run this country as a dictator.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, they don't want to set up a dictatorship. They're already governing as a dictatorship. Look at what's happening in the House of Representatives right now with Speaker Johnson literally hanging on by the skin of his chinny chin chin. And everything that he does, they're saying that one out of 435 uh, uh, sworn representatives, they're saying that any one of them can just willy nilly stand up and call for his ouster, and the ball begins rolling on that. So that's not a democracy. It doesn't have to be 214 congresspersons to do it. It merely needs to be one. So they're already creating a dictatorship, and we must really remember what the danger of all of this is. We really need to go back and understand this experiment called the United States of America and what the framers of the United States Constitution putting together in terms of the governance of this country and from whence they came. They were coming from the madness and the tyranny of a monarchy that gave subjects virtually very limited rights. And the king ruled, and what the king said, that's what it, that's what it was. A democracy says that majority rules. And what 2025 is seeking to do, what the Trump administration is seeking to do, what MAGA is seeking to do, and that's the Trump administration, because Trump's administration is out of power now and seeking to come back. But what they're really trying to do, Bishop, in a real sense, is take us back to a monarchy, take us back to one person ruling over everyone, one class ruling over everyone, and that is totally against. That is the antithesis of the founding of this country, the crafting of the crafters of the U.S. Constitution. It's not what they ever intended, and it's so funny because as people are saying, to put Trump in, we're just trying to make sure we can get more money, or we're trying to do this. It's bigger than all of that. Everything suffers when democracy leaves. Everything suffers. The economic system will suffer, and they will see those people who are wanting to put Trump in because they're trying to safeguard their wealth. They will come to regret it, as well as the working class, middle class, the evaporating middle class, and and those who are the working poor. Everyone will regret it, because this system is not set up to support that type of system. This system is set up to support and be a democracy where majority rules.
One of the things, I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to interject something here. When you say we're already dealing with a dictatorship, let's go back to what Trump did when he was the president, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trump ensured
Oh, he's not the
himself.
president. He's not the president anymore.
Well, he don't
Let
supposed to
him
be.
tell
How about that? He don't supposed to be. But
it. Go ahead.
what he did was he set up a buffer for himself. And the Republican Party, this has been a plan all along. He set up a buffer for himself to put people on the appellate court. We've talked about this before. on the appellate court at the lower level of the appellate court. And then he put people on the Supreme Court. Now that we can see the justice, sister justice, or brother justice, or justice with the blind over his face is not fair, because we see when we got a person like Clarence Thomas, whose wife worked with Trump to overthrow the government with the
Jimmy Thomas.
insurrection, and others who were part of that, and we still tied up in courts, and we're looking at that this man continues to appeal and appeal and appeal any decision, because he knows he controls the appellate court. He controls the judges on the appellate level because he put them in place. So they're loyal to him. So that's why we're getting this stalemate. And they want to keep accusing Biden, saying that Biden is using his Justice Department to come after him, to come after Trump. No, the system is coming after him because of what he did when he caused an insurrection to try to keep a peaceful transition of power, because he wanted to stay in power.
Right.
And what he has done is, and what he's done, Shannon, clearly, what he has done, brothers and sisters, what he has done when he set those judges in place on the appellate court level, he knew what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew that what he was going to do in terms of if he didn't win by the election, how he was going to fight to keep power, and he's still yet fighting to keep power. And by doing the things that he's doing, he's defiant of the judges who are not his judges, not appointed by him, but judges that's really trying to carry out the law as they should be administering law. He studied challenging their authority by, speaking out and saying these things that he shouldn't be saying, or other people would be in jail for. He's doing that because he said, I am, and that's what a dictator would do. I tell you what to do. I am the dictator. You do what I say do. And do we really want that? Do we really, as a country, as a nation, want to have that type of government? And do we want to really go back to states' rights, where every individual state can do what he or she wants to do in terms of elections, how elections are, they're already doing it, how elections are being held, who can vote, who can't vote, or will you even have the right to vote? Really? I mean, what you just said is true, because all that stuff can go away if we have a dictatorship. Everything. You can't say, well, I remember when I was president of the union in the county, and I was telling them, because the jobs where people were classified, everybody who had classification, they could have appeal rights of that suspension, termination, or demotion, right? So I was telling people, because they were trying to change it, and they were going to do away with that right for employees. And they did. And they did. They were talking about, oh, no, they can't change that. No, they can't do that. Now, believe it or not, all people except for public safety in Fulton County are unclassified, right? Because they can vote in what they want to vote in and do what they want to do. But we have to fight for our rights and stand up for our rights. So you're absolutely right in what you just said. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, and I know we're coming up on our time, and we just have to pull some of this into maybe the next program that we do. But Trump said, and when he said that I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and these people would still elect me, and then after hearing what Steve Bannon had said, I always wondered what made Trump say that. And that's because there was some science that went into, there was some political science that went into the strategy that they were going to use to cultivate MAGA. And QAnon and all of that was a part of it. And they knew what they were going to do. And they told Trump that. And the way Trump interprets things is, if you try to give him a computer and say, write, he will grab crayons. So he's always going to dumbed down and it's going to be beautiful and it's going to be great and it's going to be wonderful and it's going to be terrific. He always dumbs down the science of what was told to him. So he really couldn't even comprehend himself what Steve Bannon was saying when he said that they are putting a plan together to govern for the next 50 years, the executive. What Trump understood that science to be with his crayons, what he wrote that to be when he drew a picture of it, was that he could go shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and they'd make him president. He could stand up and speak out against a judge and that judge wouldn't gag him or wouldn't put him in jail. He could do whatever he wants to do. And the sad thing about it is it seems like the picture that was painted to him and what he's embraced, it seems like the country is looking to move in that direction. And that's a very dangerous direction to go into.
Very much so, very much so. But we have much more to talk about these things and what's going on with the kids around with the colleges and university. So we'll be back next week with more here on Straight Talk with Shanan and myself. Hey, do this for us: like us, subscribe to the channel, make comments, and share. Now, when you go out on the subscription, you'll see subscribe. Just hit subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. Hit the bell so anytime that we come on, you'll know it when we're on. So we love for you to listen to us on WIGO each Sunday at 7 p.m. That's 1570 on your AM dial. With yours truly, Greg Fann, the preacher man, and Shanan Jones. Get your news and information to Miss C. She'll make that announcements for you. Go out to Straight Talk at 1362 at gmail.com. That's Straight Talk 1362 at gmail.com. We've been having some difficulties with the Wi-Fi and our connection streaming, but you can hear us. And of course, we do apologize for the technical things that are happening. But hey, 'tis life and 'tis the way things go. Until next week, you've been in tune to nothing but Straight Talk with yours to the great fan, the preacher man, and Shanan E. Jones. And this ain't been nothing but Shanan what? Straight Talk. Yes, and before we close out today, I want to just let you know we appreciate you. We hope that you value the information that we're sharing with you here on Straight Talk, because it's very important information as we're now in the election season. Early voting has already started in many areas, and you have the primary election will be on May the 21st in many areas, and then we have the general election, of course, in November. But please pay attention to what's going on. We don't want to have a dictatorship. We need to know and understand the 2025 plan. If you have not heard of it before, go out and look at it on YouTube. Look for the 2025 plan. Get informed, know what's going on, so that we can keep our country as a democracy and not as a dictatorship. Thank you so much for watching us here on Straight Talk. And do make your comments, do subscribe, do like, and do share with your family members and friends. And again, we apologize today for the technical difficulties we had earlier with our viewing. God bless you. You have a happy, blessed, and safe week. And don't you forget, it ain't nothing but Straight Talk.
Want to be a guest on Straight Talk?